So I just have a couple of different things to talk about. One thing that I found out, I worked with a person I know that's really good at math and Excel formulas and stuff, and I asked him to come up with what's the best ratio of like nightshade to death blossom in order to get these three numbers down to the lowest possible value. And so what we came up with is basically it's like a one, these two numbers. So when you're buying death blossom and nightshade together in order to get the amount of pigments that you need to make missives and stuff like that, what you're kind of wanting to do is do about 53 death blossom for every 17 nightshade. So if you just kind of keep that ratio, then these numbers will be reduced to the lowest that they close to what they possibly could be. Um, Now, one of the other things that I've noticed is like, well, luminous pigment is way cheaper than umbral pigment, and umbral pigment is actually pretty pretty high up, like maybe double, triple of the luminous pigment. So the thing is the market is actually valuing umbral pigment more. So you really want to maybe so I've been thinking, it's like, how can I adjust this number to uh, be more accurate? So over in TSM, actually what you I think what you want to do is you want to come up with a ratio. So one way to do it would be you can take the I wish I had the pigments here, but let's say umbral pigment. If we look at the price there, kind of like the market value is 127, region sale average is 183. So I think what I was uh, thinking about is I would take that number from my spreadsheet and then multiply it by a ratio of what uh, compared to luminous pigment. I should probably have been on my um, inscriptionist while I was doing this, because it's a little easier to look at the numbers. So basically, what I'm doing is I'm taking the number from my spreadsheet and then multiplying it by the ratio uh, of luminous. Well, like here, this is luminous pigment, so I'm multiplying by uh, uh, luminous pigment divided by umbral pigment. And when I go to umbral pigment, I'll just swap those numbers. So the 056 it should be umbral pigment. So we'll just go over there and take a look. So I've actually added in some additional stuff here, but anyway, so I'm doing the minimum times the umbral pigment divided by uh, the luminous pigment. I've also added in a value here that this is death blossom, and the rate at which you get umbral pigment out of the death blossom, I think it's like what was it? I'd have to look, but basically the one over that is the 6.67. So I'm adding this in just, if I can get death blossom really cheap, then my minimum amount for umbral pigment would be, that would be just, if that's all I milled out of it was the umbral pigment, then that would be the cost I could charge, for the map price and stuff. Um, Now the thing is you don't really need to do all this calculation and stuff. You could actually, so I'm kind of doing the same thing with sacred shards. Um, this looks pretty complicated, but basically I'm taking the minimum of the crafting cost of all the rings I can make, and then since you can get whenever you disenchant a ring, you get uh, 1.35 shards out of it, and you get 1.5 soul dust out of it. So I'm basically taking the ratio of the shard divided by the shard plus the soul dust plus the shard. Um, the and you don't really have to do these ratios. You could just actually kind of look at this and say, okay, well, on my realm, sacred shards are selling for like 200 gold, and the soul dust is selling for 20 gold. So maybe I could come up with just that's about 0.9. So I could just multiply the sacred shard by zero point 0.9 times the crafting cost and come up with a value for what I think my shards should be valued at. So and I think you can do this with just about anything where you get multiple items out of like out of the process, either milling, prospecting, stuff like that. You can kind of do the same thing with prospecting, where you get the 3 different gems and the other stuff. You could kind of come up with something like that to give you an evaluation, and it's also tied to what the market is paying for them. So let's see. I think I was going to talk about something else. Jewel crafting. I actually made some updates on here. I found some mistakes where I think I wasn't doing. I had one of these was going off of a different number here, and so anyway, I corrected a few mistakes here. And actually, I've gotten my cost even lower than the 125. And then if I use the formula to multiply stuff out, my shard cost is close to 100 here. So now on the soul dust, I do actually do something a little bit different. Since I'm also a tailor, I can create the cloth bracers and then disenchant them. And so what this is taking into account is the cost of crafting the bracers and disenchanting them. I get about 2.5 soul dust on each one. So I'd rather use that number. That number is a little bit more likely to be what I'm going to be using if I'm getting soul dust out of these items. So we can come look at actually here we can let's see. My crafting cost is 26 gold, and like 2.5 into that is roughly about 10. So that's what you're getting out there. Now I could do something where I take I use that number instead of the market value here, to figure out what the shard's worth. So that's I think what we're trying to do is get these numbers down to as low as possible. And the advantage of the whole jewel crafting stuff is, from what I've heard, is people look at that as the jewels, the gems actually that come out of there is kind of a waste product because everyone's trying to get the essences out. So that's just an alternative way to make use of that those resources that otherwise you might just be. It might take years to sell all that stuff, but if you have a use for it and you can actually make even more gold from it, then that's to your advantage. Let's see. I think that was most of what I wanted to talk about. If I'll try to post the links to both of these spreadsheets if you want to get another copy. I keep kind of adding stuff to them. They're works in progress. Here I've kind of added in some of the formulas that I'm contemplating about using for like soul dust and sacred shards and stuff like that. So um, anyway, I hope this video is useful to you, and y'all have a great day, and Merry Christmas.